Most people think that wealth is just a bigger house, a nicer car, and a better holiday once or twice a year. But that's not the case. You see, the biggest shift in my life didn't come from making more money. It came the first time I actually saw how people with real money live, how different their reality is to all the rest of us. I'm talking about the kind of wealth that disconnects your life from income completely. And this is something that once you see it, you just can't ever unsee it. You can't go back to seeing the world the same way. It forces you to expand what you believe is possible. These people live a life where their day is not shaped by a schedule, a job, or a boss, but purely by their own choices. Let me explain to you the moment that this really cracked open for me. So back when I worked in public accounting about 3-4 years ago, we had a lot of wealthy clients. And I worked for a mid-tier global accounting firm, and it really attracted, a lot of high net wealth individuals and couples. But there was one client in particular that totally changed my entire worldview. He had a portfolio that was worth millions of dollars, and it was nothing interesting, really. It was just term deposits at solid interest rates rolling over and a bunch of conservative investments, mostly in cash and cash equivalents. It was very boring, and it was very conservative. And this man was literally sailing around the world on a yacht, living on a boat. He would pull up to an island approximately once a month, and he would head to an ATM machine and would just withdraw $10,000. All of it entirely funded by interest income. He had these deposits, multi-millions of dollars, that were just rolling over month after month and just spitting money into the account from thin air. And he literally lived on the boat, and once a month he'd just pull up, make a withdrawal, presumably just buy all his stuff, go out to dinner, restock his boat, and then go back out to sea. That was literally his life. And I remember talking to one of my managers at the time, and I was like, I had the job of going through this guy's bank statements, and I just was staring at it and thinking about it and comparing it to mine. And I was like, this is insane. And my boss goes, yeah, he's a man of leisure. A man of leisure? Like, what? The fuck does that even mean? But this was literally his life. Like, no job, no panic, no commute, no alarm clock. A lifestyle completely paid for by assets that somebody in his bloodline built decades earlier. Seeing that type of wealth for the first time in your 20s, that hits you like a truck. And it was really the first time that I understood that wealth isn't about earning. It's about owning. You can't earn your way into that position from the starting point that I was in. And this actually continued throughout my career. That's just one example. So later on, I worked in a law firm. Law firms operate trust accounts. Lawyers tend to have wealthy clients. For the time I worked in this law firm, I used to watch 7- and 8-figure amounts of client monies moving like we would move money between our check and savings account. Someone literally buying a property or doing a deal, buying a business with a phone call or an email. Literally no stress, no ceremony, nothing special, just moving massive chunks, millions of dollars around like it was nothing, just because they can. And this was the moment I realized something. For wealthy people, money isn't a destination. It's simply a tool, and they use it without friction. And then you travel the world. I've been to 60 countries, and on a random Tuesday afternoon somewhere in Europe, say Milan or Paris, but you literally see this everywhere. Somebody's casually sitting out in a restaurant, al fresco, out on a terrace, and they're just sitting there on a Tuesday at 3 p.m., dropping $100 on a plate, like it's literally nothing. And you contrast that with, where you might have came from. It's grey skies, middle of winter, you're commuting on a train at 7:30 in the morning to try and make it to your job where you're going to be paid just enough to be able to eat. It makes you realize that wealth isn't actually rare, it's just concentrated. It exists in pockets that you don't grow up inside. And I suppose that this is the real punchline. Seeing the other side of wealth changes you permanently, because you realize that real wealth isn't about flexing or luxury. It's about structure. It's about the mechanics of how the world actually works for people that aren't selling their time constantly for money, that just simply own assets. It's a totally different game. And once you see it, you can't go back to believing in the default script. And here's the other part that nobody tells you. Wealth becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you have it, it's so hard to get, but once you have it, the entire game tips in your favor. The whole system that we live in around the world is designed by the wealthy, for the wealthy, to keep them wealthy. And you've probably heard this a lot, but it's so true. Wealthy people do not fund their lifestyle by working. They fund it by owning things that keep going up in value, whether they do anything or not. Their assets literally compound and cash flow while they sleep. The stock market, for example, rises over time. Property appreciates over time. Private businesses grow year on year, and accordingly their wealth increases even if they're doing nothing. And when you're in this situation, the banking system treats you completely differently. You don't need to sell your assets to get cash. You can literally just walk straight into the bank and ask for a loan and borrow against your asset base. And this is where stuff gets crazy. You've got extremely low interest rates that the general population doesn't have access to. You've got effectively no personal income requirement. You can be unemployed on paper, and there's no tax triggered because you didn't sell your assets. In most jurisdictions, you only trigger tax when you actually liquidate. But if the assets just stay in the market compounding, you can borrow against them without having to pay $1. They borrow, they spend, they buy more assets, and the assets rise faster than the cost of debt. They can even borrow to invest because they get the money so free from the bank. The money is so cheap. You see interest rates as low as 1% or even less. Basically, token interest rates, it's almost nothing. Whereas they can buy property that might be going up in value by 8 or 10% per year, or stocks that might be going up by 12%, or they might have an opportunity to invest in a startup that could 10x. And this is really fundamentally why you hear the saying, rich people get richer and poor people get poorer. It's a feature of the system. It's not because they're smarter, it's simply because the system that we live in rewards ownership and it punishes labor. And when these people die, this is probably the craziest part of all, most jurisdictions just reset the cost base. So the next generation inherits decades of growth tax-free. And once you've seen this properly, and once you understand it and comprehend it, you can't pretend that the get a job, work 40 years, retirement script, you can't pretend that that's the only path. That path suddenly looks like the most risky path. That path results in effectively you don't own anything. And as you've heard from this, the theme of the system is the only way to get anywhere is to own stuff, to build and own assets. To get a job and move slowly through life, paying off a mortgage on one house, that will give you certainty, that will give you stability, but it will not give you prosperity and growth, and you'll never join the other side. This was really the moment that I shifted forever, I stopped thinking in terms of income. I remember when I started out in my career, before I'd seen all of these things, and I looked at my meager salary and I thought, okay, if I just get this, up $20,000 this year and then another $20,000 next year, in maybe 3 or 4 years, we'll be making some good money. And it's like, that was wrong. I stopped asking that question altogether. It's not how can I earn more? It's really what can I build or own that can then produce constantly without my continuous effort. Because once you understand how wealth actually works, a job becomes exactly what it actually is. It's simply a bridge. It's a temporary chapter, a tool for escape velocity, not a place to stay. Most people don't change their life because they never see the other side. They never see a default model. They only know the script that they were given, that their parents followed, that their parents followed. But once you see how the real wealth operates, how these people really move through the world, how people live when their time isn't tied to income, everything becomes a choice. You can't go back and you can't unsee it. And here's the thing that rewires everything. You realize very quickly that you can't save your way into this club and you can't work your way into this club. No amount of hours will get you admission. You have to build or buy an asset that eventually detaches your time completely from income. That is the only path out. That's the only way across to the other side. That's the moment that life becomes yours. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I drop one like this every 48 hours and I hope to see you in the next one.